5 in the books. Monday night, kind of a stinker. Not all that much fun was that Monday night game, especially if you were a Cleveland Browns fan. Remember I told you my one of my best friends after that Browns Week 1 loss to the Titans. If you were listening back then, thank you, loyal listener A. And B, he told me he was going to drive his truck off a bridge. A little bit of an overreaction, but that's what he said. He didn't do it, at least not yet. Last night during that Monday night game, he told me that he now is fine with like a 7-9 record for the Browns this year. Funny how things kind of turn around in a month that quickly, but that's where you should be with him on that. Don't drive your truck off a cliff, but understanding that in the NFL these things take time. If you look back at history, just look at a few teams who kind of had that burst of excitement. Think about how often we talk about teams that make the Super Bowl or even win the Super Bowl and then miss the next year. We've seen that happen numerous times over the past 15 to 20 years. These things take time. It's like building a house, man. Or I guess it'd be more like probably buying a house. Like that's what the Browns are right now. If you're a Browns fan, and a lot of them are new, it's buying a new house. It's a nice start toward what you want, but you're going to have unexpected problems, and they're going to pop up during the process. You're going to have to fix them while you're living in the house. Raymond Rotella, who I had on here 2 weeks ago, he bought a house. He couldn't move into it for like 3 months. I don't know what all was wrong with it, but he was always dirty and filthy and cranky and tired because he just bought a house. And that's Cleveland right now. Dirty, cranky, tired. And with the Cleveland Browns, I mean, historically, that's a haunted house in Cleveland, a house that has a history of flooding in the spring, catching on fire in the fall more often than not. And oh, by the way, this new house you've got, Cleveland, in the middle of it, there's your wife decided to buy a shiny new fish tank, and you constantly have to make sure it's getting enough attention. This fish tank has a big orange number 13 to the side on it, and every time you try to get things done around this new house, you find yourself giving it attention and getting out of rhythm. Odell Beckham Jr. is a liability at this point, man. I mean, and you go back, and the example is always the Patriots have never really had that star wide receiver when they've won a Super Bowl, but I just don't know if I believe in it. You look at what the Rams are doing. They've got a bunch of B-level receivers. Odell Beckham, star receiver. Antonio Brown, star receiver. What'd he do for Pittsburgh the last few years? Julio Jones, star receiver. 1 Super Bowl appearance, that's great. Julio's great. But this idea that these teams that are going to win Super Bowls need these star receivers. We've seen what Tom Brady's done over the year. And look, I know he's an outlier, but this idea, I think Jarvis Landry's about as good as you really want, right? I think that's about as good as a receiver as you want, because you're going to pay him, but you're not going to pay him massive money. You're not going to have to listen to him bitch and moan all the time. You saw how many touches Odell Beckham Jr. had to get last night right out of the gate. They're letting him throw the ball, run the ball, and then he drops a pass. Maybe practice doing that before you're doing all the other things. They're just trying too hard to get him in the mix, and that's killing all the other guys.
Why would I sign up for that?
You're later in the podcast, Mike Tomlin. We'll get to the Steelers in a bit. But yeah, these aren't the things you want to do. I'll tell you what, man. The San Francisco 49ers, that's a nice house, right? That's a Danny Tanner house out there in the Bay Area. And they have a German Shepherd named Nick who kills anyone who tries to walk through the door, man. San Francisco's the real deal. They're killing people. Feel better about the Bengals getting blown out by them after watching the Browns and 49ers last night. Thanks for coming in on a Tuesday morning. If you were listening to this later in the week, I will try to make sure all of this content still stays relevant. Honestly, been kind of a quiet few middle of the weeks in the NFL recently until the Jay Gruden situation on Monday. We'll get to that in a minute. But got to give it up to the 49ers. They look great now, 4-0. Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Brady, the last 2 undefeated quarterbacks in football. How fair is that, right? Just someone who spawned from New England. Looks like the next version of it, but it's early. 49ers aren't going to sneak up on anyone. Now, speaking of which, they've got the Rams next week. NFC West is the best division in football, and that's the NFC division that the AFC North has to play this year. Rams, 49ers next week. I believe that's in Los Angeles. Not that is really much of a home field advantage there, but that'll be a good game. That's a 4 o'clock game. Browns at 2-3 now. Got Seattle and New England up next. I mean, things are not going well in Cleveland. You thought at this point they'd at least have the Indians in the playoffs, Instead, this is what they're dealing with. Speaking of the AFC North, Baltimore now 3-2. And look, 2 straight weeks now, I've been watching them in crunch time. Lamar Jackson's not throwing the football. And look, whatever you got to do to win, do it. Whatever works, works. But John Harbaugh, don't sit here and tell me that you like Lamar Jackson because of his arm, and that's what made you comfortable moving forward with him, and then when push comes to shove, you're calling run plays. I mean, you just saw it last year, and I said it before the season started, Lamar Jackson, just maybe he'll get there, but right now he's not a come-from-behind quarterback when it comes to throwing the football. If you go look in some of his games last year, he just was not good at throwing the football, and I'm not someone who thinks he should change positions. I still think he's a good quarterback, but all those goofballs who were saying that him and Mahomes were the next Manning and Brady, I mean, were you paying attention? Were you just watching what they showed you on SportsCenter? The razzle-dazzle plays? Or were you watching the 3rd and 7s where he just can't seem to figure it out? Lamar Jackson's got the Bengals this week. Good team to practice against. By the way, if you're a bettor, if you're a gambler, if you're a degenerate, and you're looking to risk your mortgage this month to make a few bucks, I like the Bengals plus 12. I'll just put that out there. Bengals suck. They're terrible, but they've been in most of these games they've played. Not going to talk about them anymore. I have good news for everyone listening, and that is if you are listening, you, yes, you, are competent enough to run the Washington Redskins. I'm serious. Could you be any worse? All right, so I've obviously got a little bit of a bias here. I want to see DWAYNE Haskins do well. Everyone who went to Ohio State like myself saw the amazing things he did. And now it's kind of like, I wish Haskins would have said no. I don't know that you can when you're the 15th quarterback. I almost think you have to be a top 5 quarterback to be like, nah, I'm not coming to play for you. But I've come to defend the players who want out of certain situations. We see this in the NBA a lot more than we do anywhere else. But quarterbacks in the NFL need to do this more. We saw Eli Manning successfully, John Elway. They both said, no, I'm not going to play for your trash franchise. I wish DWAYNE Haskins would have done that. Again, would that have been the best look with the 15th pick? Probably not, but someone was going to take him. It's not like he was going to fall out of that first round. I'll be the first to admit I was dead wrong on thinking he was for sure going to be a top 10 pick. I think he went 15th overall. Let me have my producer, Matt Edwards, check on that. 16th overall is where he went, but if you look down the list there, another quarterback, I guess, didn't go for quite some time until Drew Lock went to Denver at 42. So there was quite a gap. I'm not against this whole idea. There's people who argue, you get drafted somewhere, you work hard, you figure out. No, forget that. This guy, DWAYNE Haskins, and so many quarterbacks like him have worked so hard their whole lives from the time they're in Pee-wee football all the way up till they're in their early 20s to become the best prospect they can possibly be. One of the top, in this situation, DWAYNE Haskins was one of the top 3 prospects along with Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones in his profession. He's worked so hard to be one of the best 3 coming out of college. An elite football school, by the way, Ohio State. He got to that point. He got to start. He beat out Joe Burrow, who now looks like he might be a first-round pick in the NFL. I mean, you don't go to an elite culinary school and then go work at Burger King. Just I don't get this idea that people have. You just go where you get drafted. I wish DWAYNE Haskins would have forced his way out of there. Jay Gruden's gone now. Maybe that will help. I think Jay Gruden's going to be a good head coach somewhere. He didn't have much to work with in Washington. Did wonders in Cincinnati, was the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati before he went to the Redskins. I'm all aboard now with guys who want to not go to a certain franchise. And I said this before Baker Mayfield's draft. I said, whoever Cleveland takes, if they're taking a quarterback, I would avoid going there. And I know some of you are going to complain about that now because Baker looks, despite what we saw on Monday night, it looks like he's still going to be the answer there. And I think he will be. Is he going to be as good as everyone thought all offseason? Probably not. I mean, the bar was set way too high for this whole franchise. And as I always say, and as a lot of people always say, quarterback gets too much blame when they lose, too much credit when they win. That's exactly what we're going to see with Baker Mayfield right now. But I said back then, whoever the Browns, if I'm Sam Darnold, because a lot of people thought that's who they would take at number 1, whoever they take, I don't want to freaking go there. Sound like a 12-year-old punk kid saying freaking. But my mom listens to this podcast, all right? Or at least she did once. She probably doesn't anymore. Regardless, I'm all aboard quarterbacks just saying, no, I'm not going to a certain place. Like I said, you're not going to become a chef under whoever a good chef is and go work at McDonald's or Burger King. And the Redskins are the Burger King of the NFL. They stink and no one wants to work there. This is why, they don't get good free agents anymore. The one I can recently remember them getting is Albert Hainsworth. That guy was a nutcase. I guess they also got Pierre Garçon, but no one at that top level. RG3, they ruined his career. He's a competent backup in this league now in Baltimore, and when you see him in there in the preseason, he looks good. Redskins Burger King of the NFL. Today's episode sponsored by Burger King, the new Impossible Whopper. Just kidding, don't have sponsors. By the way, that's one thing. Every time that Impossible Whopper for Burger King comes on, the commercial, if you're like a legit vegetarian/vegan, is that the place you want to spend your money? Did they not think that one through, that the place that uses, I would guess, like the least, the least humane ways to, I don't know what I'm talking about. But vegans and vegetarian, a little more conscious than that, I typically feel. There's some other things about them I don't like, but for the most part, good people who spend their money responsibly. I don't know what I'm talking about. But back to what I was talking about, but I do know what I'm talking about. Quarterback should push out. I thought Andrew Luck should have done this. I said that before the season started. I think his career got ruined because he went to a Colts organization that really isn't that well ran, especially when he got there. Now, right now, they look excellent. Chris Ballard doing wonders there in Indianapolis right now. And I think Peyton's experience maybe was part of the reason that Eli was like, no, I'm not going to San Diego. You guys are trash. And if you look at it, Phillip Rivers there, Phillip Rivers really ever reached his full potential in San Diego? They're one of those teams that just never seem to quite have it together. They're notoriously cheap. And hey, this works the opposite way too, right? You look at Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, I would be curious to see what Patrick Mahomes looks like elsewhere. I don't know that he would be bad. I think he would be good. I think if you're the Bears, you're still punching yourself in the face because you took Mitch Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes. I think if you're the Bengals and you took John Ross one spot of Patrick Mahomes, you're probably wishing you would have thought differently about it. But Andy Reid, one of the best offensive minds in this league the past 30 years, I'd be curious to see what he looks like without him. Aaron Rodgers got to sit a while. Big stinking Ben Roethlisberger. I told you my mom listens. Number one defense, number one running game for at least his first 3 years. I guarantee you all 3 years, top 5 running game, top 5 defense. You look at that first Super Bowl he won. I put in air quotes, won. He threw not 20 passes. He did not throw 20 passes. Situations matter. Drew Brees, the Chargers let him walk. Think about that. The Chargers, who have had very little success in the postseason, ever, let Drew Brees, an all-time quarterback, a first-ballot Hall of Famer, walk away. He wasn't getting it done in San Diego. And Drew Brees, not our guy. Let's move on. Situations matter. You've never seen your mom drunk. Go to Lake Tahoe on spring break, mom gets hammered. Different situation. I don't really know if that applies. I got to watch Kyler Murray for the first time in a full game. I've tried to watch as much as I can. He's fascinating. Just the idea of his potential is a lot of fun. A guy who can run like that, and he ran all over the Bengals. But that's what worries me. And he had the run that won them the game that set them up for the field goal. A guy his size can't run this much. And Chris Spielman, who I think is as good as any analyst in football, was saying he thinks that this will work for Kyler. He was on the game along with Tom Brenneman. Easy drive for those guys in Cincinnati. But a guy with that size, you can't run that much. Like I said, Kyler Murray looks like someone dressed to kick her up and put him under center. He looks that tiny compared to those 6'6" Carlos Dunlap guys and the offensive linemen in front of him. He's not going to be able to run that much. You can get away with it for now, but eventually Kyler Murray is going to get hurt. He plays in that amazing NFC West. You got Aaron Donald, Bobby Wagner, Nick Bosa. I mean, those guys are F-250s, and Murray is a Prius. And when you're running like that, you're eventually going to collide. That's a car crash waiting to happen. And some people say, yeah, it works for Cam Newton. Yeah, Cam Newton is a grizzly bear in a Panthers uniform. The guy's a monster. Kyler Murray looks like your cool substitute teacher. I don't know. He's a tiny guy. I mean, Cam Newton has 8 inches on him. I just do not see it working. What an embarrassing time for the Bengals to lose that game at home. No one in the stands. I did love Chris Spielman taking jabs at Cliff Kingsbury, who thought it would be nice to wear skinny jeans on the football field. I guess they were skinny pants. They weren't jeans. That would be even better if he were wearing jeans. If West Virginia ever gets an NFL franchise, we might see that. I guess we kind of have that with Pittsburgh a little bit. Speaking of Pittsburgh, things not going well in the Steel City. Yins are not having the season Yins would have liked to have had. Mike Tomlin after the game, just a real tough guy, you know. I want to give you here's a little bite out of Mike Tomlin after Sunday's overtime loss to Baltimore.
I know that you don't believe in moral victories, but
you're right, I don't.
Are you proud of your defense, though, the way they respond?
You're right, I don't.
Yeah, I don't know where that reporter is from. But reporter friends, maybe don't ask about moral victories to a professional head coach. And I'm not mad at the reporter. Let me play it one more time.
I know that you don't believe in moral victories, but
you're right, I don't.
Are you proud of your defense, though, the way they respond?
You're right, I don't.
That poor reporter. I get it. Like, you're trying to say, what the reporter's trying to do there is be kind in his question, right? He's looking at his, whether it's TV or whether it's print, he's looking and saying, well, at the end here, we can wrap up and say, well, the defense. That's what he's asking. He's saying, well, you guys lost, but the defense in the second half really shut them down, didn't let them in the end zone. That's what he was getting to, I'm 97% sure. Mike Tomlin just having none of it. And I don't know, I mean, this might have been, you know, a young reporter. I remember being in that situation. I remember when I was, so I think most of you, I don't know if any of you know, but a chunk of you know I was a sports reporter for the majority of my 20s, sports anchor, reporter, and television, a few different markets before I finally left and had a life outside of that. It was great. I loved it, but I love what I'm doing now too. But I remember being scared at press conferences. I remember being 23 years old and covering, I'm working in market 203, which there's only 208 markets. I'm in the 6th smallest, and 23-year-old me is about to ask Urban Meyer a question. Here I am making $7.50 an hour. ESPN's in the room. Every media outlet known to man in there. And goofy old me in my pleated khakis, polo shirt, and tennis shoes asking a stupid question so I can feel like a big guy. I get it, man. I feel, and I don't know, and you need to go through this. You need to be humiliated in life, I think, no matter what your profession is. It's very important. No matter what you do, you need to feel terrible from time to time in order to move on. If things are always smooth sailing, you're going to be like, yeah, I'm cool, and then you're going to go through life being someone no one likes. You don't want that to happen. I felt bad for this guy, but you cannot just give it to him. Just give it to Mike Tomlin. He can handle it. What are you going to... I mean, they're going to say, you know what, Kevin from WASS in Gooberville, West Virginia? You know, I feel good about competing today. Thanks for bringing that up. Our defense, boy, they sure tried to play tough. My second-string quarterback nearly got killed, but we tried hard. Avoid these questions, guys. I'll tell you who was really nice about that, Tim Kirkjian, who ESPN's baseball guy. I think he's still at ESPN. He might be at The Athletic like every other reporter in the world. But I remember going up to Tim Kirkjian. So I'm in Pittsburgh and going up to Andrew McCutchen's locker. And I think this was McCutchen's MVP season. And the first two people at his locker are me and Tim Kirkjian. McCutchen had media availability. And I remember looking at Tim Kirkjian. I was probably around the same age, maybe 24, 25. I guess I probably would have been 24. You guys don't care. I was an idiot in my early 20s. And I looked at Tim Kirkjian and I said, I got to make sure I know what I'm talking about standing next to you. And I didn't sound nearly that confident when I said it. But he had that classic laugh that I'm not going to try to imitate. You know, he's kind of got that nasally voice. And he was just like, oh, we're all the same here. And just from that moment on, I felt good about being a human being. If you ever see Tim Kirkjian, buy him a beer. Nice guy. But Mike Tomlin, not as nice of a character. Mike Tomlin has typically done well without Ben Roethlisberger, but he usually has a better team than what he had right now. He's usually had Todd Haley, who's, despite being somewhat of a psycho and inapproachable, is a guy who knows about as much as you can possibly know when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. I want to play one more soundbite from Sunday from Mike Tomlin. Here you go.
Ask somebody that's in charge of that. I don't drive carts and things of that nature.
No context necessary. I'm not going to give you any. If you watch the game, you know what he's talking about. Just know that Mike Tomlin does not drive carts or things of that nature. So to the reporter who asked the question we previously played, Tomlin wasn't exactly in the mood anyways. It's funny to see how coaches suddenly struggle once their Hall of Fame quarterbacks gone. That's why, and again, for the most part, Tomlin has done a very good job. Belichick did a good job for that 1 year with Matt Castle, but man, I want to see him for like 3 years without Tom Brady. I just think, I'm here to remind you, Bill Belichick, before Tom Brady, losing record as an NFL head coach. Bill Belichick, I just looked, turned 68 this offseason, so I don't know about him still coaching after Brady retires. Speaking of AFC teams, because that's what half the league is, and we talk about the league here on this good old football podcast. I'm your host, Matt Edwards. Thank you for tuning in on this cool October day. I hope it's cool wherever you are, otherwise it won't make sense. It's raining in New York City right now. I hope it's not coming over too loud. Look, a lot of us are going to dwell on this Monday night game and how good the Niners are versus how bad the Browns look. There's an obsession with Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham. I get that. Those are guys who have brought that upon themselves, and I'm sure that they get clicks and ratings and all that, and that's great. But the Indianapolis Colts, baby, they won that game in the trenches. They went up to the big old red giant in Kansas City, which is what no one calls them but me, and they punched the Chiefs right in the mouth. Look, I think the NFL's got a little too carried away the past half decade or so with like the fancier finesse offensive linemen, the guys who can move in space. I want more guys on my team like Quentin Nelson, right? Quentin Nelson, the guard for the Colts, probably the best interior lineman in football. You walk into any Tractor Supply Company store in America right now, you'll find 3 guys who look like Quentin Nelson. That's my kind of offensive lineman. Go get those guys in the draft. Do they have Skoal wintergreen grains in their teeth? Get me that guy to block for my quarterback. The Colts have it figured out, man, and I was dead wrong. There's a few teams I was dead wrong on. A lot of us were. I was dead wrong on the Colts. They have got it figured out. With the general manager they have there now. But it's amazing to me, and we kind of saw this with the Niners too, right? They've drafted in the trenches. NFL teams, quit drafting Pac-12 guys who can move in space. Get guys who are going to maul the defensive tackle in front of them. I want Wisconsin guys. I want Oklahoma guys. I want guys who drink Busch Light and will beat you up if you even mention White Claw. Man, it sucks Andrew Luck isn't here for this too, right? That guy, all-time Hall of Fame talent, retires, and suddenly they get it together in Indianapolis. Jacoby Brissett's great. Seems like an awesome human being. Guy you can easily root for. But, man, Andrew Luck is one of those guys who, if he stays in the league and he stays healthy with this team, all the goofballs who are talking about Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes take a hike. No doubt it's Andrew Luck versus Patrick Mahomes once old Tom Brady retires in 10 years here or so. And look, what we saw from Jacoby Brissett, by the way, as great as Luck would be to have, what we're seeing from Jacoby Brissett right now with that run game, that's a big reason I wouldn't be so fast to move away from quarterbacks like Andy Dalton, Dak Prescott, who's going to get paid, Derek Carr, who a lot of people were jumping off that bandwagon. Get the right team around these guys and they're fine. We've seen that with so many quarterbacks, including the 3 I just mentioned, and we're kind of seeing that with Tampa this year too, and Jameis Winston. All these teams have made, or all these quarterbacks I just mentioned, they've made the playoffs with good but not great teams around them. And I'll argue, and I think most of you will as well, because I've got a smart audience out there, building an offensive line and a run game, A lot easier to do than finding that twice a decade, always going to make you a Super Bowl contender quarterback. Those don't come around too often. Look at the ones who are in the league now. I'm not going to list them for you, but I think most of you know they're closer to 40 than 30. They don't come around that often. And we're kind of seeing it right now, right, with Gardner Minshew, with Kyle Allen. These guys have no business competing on Sundays, but they're fine because they've got solid teams around them. Neither of those guys will be doing what they're doing if they were in Cincinnati or Miami or Washington or any of these trash teams. And I mean, look at the struggles Luke Falk's having with the Jets right now. I mean, Sam Darnold's in there. They look like a somewhat competent team. They should have beat Buffalo week 1. But you take away Sam Darnold, pretty good quarterback, put in a less than good quarterback with an absolute hot garbage team around him, and all of a sudden, the wheels have fallen off for some of these teams. I'm telling you what Indianapolis is doing right now, and who knows, this is a copycat league. That's an overused term, but it's true. Some of these teams, the Cardinals and Bengals being two of them, who struggled to score points until the fourth quarter on Sunday, went out and hired these alleged offensive gurus, and things aren't looking so great right now. I'm not going to include the Jets because Adam Gase is a coordinator, not a head coach. Strange guy. We've seen that. We've been over that on this podcast. So I'm recording on a Monday night, just about Sunday morning, or Tuesday morning right now. I got my days of the week in reverse. But this will come out Tuesday morning, very early, hopefully before you guys are up. I think I'm going to start doing this, recording after the Monday night game, just plugging it in right away. It's ready on Tuesday morning. Working on getting some new mic setups. I know I mentioned that last week, but I want to do it right. So I'm going to take time. Things take time, Cleveland. Don't you realize this? You can't just have a podcast up and running out of nowhere. You can't have a rookie podcaster come in, have a couple of good shows, and think all of a sudden you're going to be Joe Rogan. Anyways, you ever hear Joe Rogan talk about football? I love Joe Rogan. The few times the NFL's been brought up on his podcast, it's like, dude, stop. You don't know what you're taught. He'll say some things, and he's a smart guy. My life is better for his podcast. I'm not someone who listens to all of them, but just if someone's on who I like, I'll check it out. I probably listen to like one a week at least. Sometimes he talks about football. It's like, dude, I can tell you don't know what you're talking about. Remember last week I said I wanted to get sponsors. I bet he makes mad money off sponsors. I know he does. A lot of those guys now are making mad money off their podcast. Last week I said I wanted to retire to Hawaii, get some sponsors. I thought about that too, and I forget what. Oh, someone mentioned watching football in California, and then it reminded me of Hawaii. Can you imagine? Let's say I move to Hawaii, or you move to Hawaii, or anyone who likes football move to Hawaii. You have to get up to watch your favorite team on Sundays. The game starts at 7 a.m. out there. You want to watch a 1 o'clock Sunday game, it's a 7 a.m. game. And then, if you end up, say, your team gets blown out like we saw the Browns do last night, if your team just has a bad game, we all know those games that put you in a bad mood. Well, guess what? It's 10 a.m. And you have the rest of the day to contemplate life and how horrible your football team. That's probably responsible for 70% of all divorces in Hawaii are NFL letdowns on Sunday mornings. Think about that. The 4 o'clock games will be over at 1 p.m. And then the Sunday night game would start. Gosh, I hope this is right. I'm going to sound stupid. The Sunday night game would start at 2:20 a.m., 2:20 p.m. 2:20 p.m. is when Sunday Night Football would start. That Carrie Underwood song wouldn't make sense out there if you're in Mahalo Land. I don't know if that's a nickname. I don't know what the Hawaii state nickname is, but I don't think they care as much out there, though, right? They kind of have cooler things. Here are the Hawaii nicknames. You'll have this for trivia night, all right? I know some of you are thinking, Matt, we can tell you're coming toward the end of the podcast. This is where you start rambling, saying stupid stuff. Let me tell you what, Steve in Montana. At one point, you're going to be at a trivia night, and they're going to say, name one of the state nicknames of Hawaii, and you're going to know what they are. Here's what they are. The Islands of Aloha. This is the easy one to remember. The Aloha State. Just remember that one. The three are the Islands of Aloha, Paradise, which is overused, but the easy one to remember, the Aloha State. Most of you probably already know that. Think that I am an idiot. That's all right. Welcome to the club. Like I said, working on some things. I'm trying to get guests on. If you notice, I've had 2 guests on. They've been great. I've got great feedback on those episodes. However, the audio quality is not where I want it, so I'm working on getting that set up so that I can have people in. That should be done. I'm not going to say by next week, but definitely by the following week. I shouldn't even say that. Who knows? Maybe my computer will catch on fire. Even then, I got to Best Buy a few blocks away. But working on setting that stuff up so we can get going. There's people I really want to have on, people who want to come on, but I want to make sure it gets done right. And podcasting is more expensive than you would think, man. This mic I got, not that much money. Mics to get 2 people and all that and make it sound good, a little bit more money, but we'll get through it. Maybe I'll bet the Bengals plus 12. Wouldn't that be great? Anyways, social media, if you want to follow me or just creep on me, at Matt Edwards on there. I'm not as much of a doofus as I look like in my profile picture. I think I look stupid, but a lot of people are like, oh, no, it's a nice picture. And I've asked people who usually give me honest opinions, and they say, yeah, you look like the 40-year-old virgin, but for you, it's a good-looking picture. So we're going to stick with it. Social media, at Matt Edwards on Twitter. Yell at me, talk to me, be my friend. Put that video of old Nick Bosa planting the flag on Baker Mayfield on there. And also on Instagram, which I don't really use that much for this kind of stuff. It's mostly just me being fat. But anyway, it's good old Matthew. It's me eating a bunch of food. It's not me eating the food. It's just me showing you pictures of the cool things around New York I'm eating or I'm going to make. Being a big tub of lard, nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with it either. A little plump, maybe, but what are you going to do about it? Anyways, I am getting way off track here on this night as we edge into Tuesday. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Make sure you check out Automagik, singing us in, bringing us out on Spotify. They got a new track out I really enjoy. My name is Matt Edwards. It's a good old football podcast. Enjoy Week 6.
I don't drive carts and things of that nature.